Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with my good friend Jason Gerardo. And today it is the hour of Empower. Our main focal point or attention is to the word success, and that has many meanings to many different people. And would love to hear what the audience has to say. Chat's wide open. Feel free to comment and feel free to offer your insights. So, with that, let's go forward. Jason, glad to have you. I'd love to hear what your initial thoughts are on the word success and any catch up or anything you're doing that could be of interest to the audience.
All right, thanks, Don. Thanks for having me on again today. And great to be here with the community. Looking forward to a great conversation. And hopefully, the community pops in with some comments and some insights to always helps us along. And that's the point of this LinkedIn Live, right? Is to not only education but sharing our wisdom and knowledge from both sides and from everywhere. So I'm excited. Um, Good things going on. I work with a group called Stop Stigma Sacramento, and I did my first talk with them yesterday, and so I consider that a success. I consider that one be able to get in front of people and help people, and it's a group that works on getting rid of the stigma for mental health. And we spoke at a location in Sacramento, and about 30 people showed up. It was a good turnout, and I was able to share. There was three speakers yesterday, and we speak for about 15, 20 minutes to share our story and kind of talk a little bit and then answer some questions after. And afterwards, some people were able to open up in the group that was there with us and to share some of their stuff. And that's how we get rid of the stigma around mental health. So we have these conversations, and that's the beauty about doing LinkedIn Lives is we get to have these conversations, and we can talk about a myriad of topics and share. And maybe someone might hear something today that's going to spark some joy in their life and or in their career. So that's always exciting. And so success, and we could define it. We could give a definition, which I like to do sometimes, but we're not going to do that because I think we all define what success is for us. We have our own measuring stick, and that's the beauty of it. And you have to find out if that measuring stick is helping you or hindering you. Sometimes we set it too big, sometimes we set it too small. So I'll start there, and let's just see where it takes us.
Well, it's always a good start when you start. So, to pick up on it, success naturally means different things to different people. And really, I believe the value or primary importance is the consistency of being successful. So, a lot of people spend a lot of time to get to a successful point, but it's short lived and they're back into where they came from versus building like on a building block type strategy where you put a good foundation and you start building value on top of it and taking people with you. And I think that's one of the keys is going from individual to collective, where you're part of a bigger team or movement or something where it's not all on your shoulders and you can learn and grow with other people. And part of being successful is sharing that success, whether it's knowledge, whether it's wealth, whether it's the ability to motivate people to do well. So there's a lot of ingredients that could go into building a successful career, hopefully that dovetails with a successful life. Because at the end of the day, one of the best measures is happiness, satisfaction, pride, confidence, a lot of intangibles that mean so much over time because those are the things that will get you through some of the tough times. And, great success is a climb. It's not easy, but it's not meant to be easy, because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it and nobody would really have to work too hard at it. Maybe in the future that may come to be. We've got our good friend Carrie here today. Why did the apple pie go to the doctor? It was feeling a little crumbly. Well, it could have been crummy too, but either way, I get it. Good joke. Carrie says, I love to see what success is. I'm still here. Got snowed in since Monday. Texas isn't geared for the snow we had. Ain't that the truth? And, this is winter. Being in Colorado, actually, the other day, the high was, I believe, 6, and the low was, I think, -6.
Wow.
But, I will say one thing about Colorado. It is mostly sunny, mostly dry, which doesn't make -660. But coming from Detroit, when it's -6, you get all the wind coming off the water and all the humidity. So there's always something good. And if you can't find something good, just count till March and that'll take care of the winter. So, getting back to our success discussion, I think it's vital, again, for people to learn from successful people. And that's easy to do by all the audibles, all the books, all the shows, all the videos. So, what was one of your main ingredients, Jason, to building your success?
I've had a lot of great mentors in my career. I haven't had a ton, but the ones that I've had have been amazing. And I think we gravitate to those people, and those relationships it wasn't all sunshine and popcorn. It was holding me accountable. And one of the things that, there's someone here that I haven't seen her in a while on LinkedIn, but she's an amazing person. And Lisa, and she talks about brag your butt off. And I think that's very important. But something also that one of my first mentors back in the day, and we're still connected here on LinkedIn, and he's been running companies and vice president of it and vice president of that, and very successful person. And I really respect him just for who he is and what he's accomplished. But we had one of those tough conversations one time, and he said, always be humble. Always be humble. Always know that there's something else that could happen, and be there. And not those words, but that's something that I've held on to. I know I'm assured of myself. I know who I am, but I always keep that, humble, and in that sense of always looking for what's next. Like you talked about building blocks. That's so true. You take those small wins, you say, okay, we got a small win. Let's celebrate now. I know I have more to go. I know the journey's not over yet, and continuing on, and I just want to step back for a second. I love the metaphor talking about the weather, this is things to be aware of. It's how you look at things. That's also a key to success. If you're like, well, it's not sunny, because like my example is I'm out here in California, Northern California, and our low is it's like 30 degrees right now. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's freezing at 30 degrees. So depending how you measure your success, right? You look at it differently, and I'm not a fan of saying, well, it could be so much worse, because that doesn't really support kind of where we're going. Let's focus on the positive. It could be better, but I'm happy where I'm at, and I'm good. It's going to get better. Like you said, spring's coming. I think that's the key to success, is know that in this example, spring is coming, and you just keep moving forward towards it. You don't neglect today. I'm a mindfulness teacher, so I would be remiss to say that, be here now, be present in where you're at, be grateful for what you have, and look for the next step.
Yeah, those are good points. And I think they're valid in the sense that everything is conditional and relative.
Yeah.
What's hot to someone is cold to someone else, and vice versa. I notice when it does get super freezing, all the husky dogs seem to be in their glory.
Yeah.
They can't get out of the snow. They burrow in, and they just love that. And then you got these dogs that are really small and not a lot of hair, and they're shivering, and they got their boots on and a coat and everything else. But I like the thought you had on being humble, because everything passes, just like that saying, this too will pass. And that works both ways, no matter how challenging things are, eventually, if you stick with it and don't fight it and don't fight yourself, then it will pass. And at least the time between when it is and when it isn't wasn't as painful, wasn't as challenging. And hopefully you come away with, what did I learn? Not what did I get? If you got fired, if you got a disappointing no from a bank, you name it, being a little bit more academic and objective about it instead of taking it personally. Right. Or trying to lop one defeat on another. Yeah, I kind of figured it's always going to work out this way. And, if you think it will, it will. If you think it won't, it won't. You're the person who's handling the steering wheel. And you also have to figure, are you putting all your eggs in one basket? Are you dependent on other people and situations to make you successful? Or do you have enough strength, enough smarts to decide, hey, this is a road I thought was going to be a good one. Let's take a pause here, redesign our direction and our method of getting there, and try it out, because then you're trying something new, and new has a chance. If you just keep repeating the old, you're just going to get more of it, and at least understand that. So you have the power, take advantage of it. And the power is, if nothing else, is to ask. Like I've mentioned, and we had a show about it with ChatGPT, you tend to think you're the master because that's the way the world has been or technology has allowed you to be. Now, when you figure you need to be a partner, not a servant to ChatGPT, but understand the capabilities, understand how what used to be challenging or impossible is now possible. That alone should give people hope and ambition. The term that people are using, which is prompt engineering, is now generating jobs that pay $100 an hour. So if you can learn how to just prompt a machine, and naturally you need enough resources and background and experience that you just don't ask questions and get $100 an hour, but you get to where you need to be. Carrie comes back with, thanks, Don, for reminding me that we're still in winter. I did get a lot of studies done while in the house from the winter. And see, that's a redeeming element to it. One door closes, another door can open up. The key is not sitting there worrying and fearing. It's taking advantage of the situation and getting some progress done, whether it's learning, whether it's making small moves in the right direction. I mean, that goes away. That goes a long way. I will focus on the positive. Right now, the climb that Don talked about is not easy. The method I had to get to the destination blurred, so I'm trying to get there. It's just not fast and it's taking time. Well, again, it's relative. How many people have spent years in unbelievably terrible situations and came out of it better for it? Now, at the time, and I've been in situations when you're approaching something that's a little scary, that's the worst time to be in. When you're leaving something scary, that's the best time, because you paid the price, you survived, and hopefully you moved forward and maybe moved up and forward. I've seen it over and over again. The difference between success and failure is a few elements that people know how to take advantage of, kind of tools. Having a strong philosophy, having a belief in something bigger than yourself, working with people and allowing them to go first. The competition side is the real challenge when you start comparing yourself to others, because nobody's the same. And what do you get out of it? And even if you're better than somebody, does that change your situation? If you're worse than somebody, that doesn't change it either. It's really giving yourself less distraction and less excuses and reasons, and I think a big part that comes to mind is taking responsibility, taking accountability, and usually in every situation, I agree, I must have some shared responsibility. It's not 100%. Just by embracing somebody or something gives you responsibility. Why did I choose that person? Why did I take that route? Well, you did it, right? And if it was done to you, you allowed it. And I think taking control, as much control as you can have, which is primarily only yourself, is a good start. And if you're generous and thoughtful and kind, you can even excuse people's bad behavior. You can look beyond it. You don't have to take what people give. And at the same time, you can give to yourself. And I guess loving yourself, self-care goes a long way. And the other big element I think that's essential is gratitude. Count your blessings. remember the times when you were a winner, when you were on top, and it shows you can do it. You've done it, and you can do it again. It's kind of funny. There's a saying, if you stay in the same place, the world will come to you. And if you've ever done that in a mall, or they don't have malls anymore, but in any situation, eventually the whole world starts moving in front of you, where if you were walking around, you might be with the same people walking around and not seeing anything new. And it's the adventure. It's the joy of waking up and having a new day, of eating some food, having some shelter. I mean, so you get down to the basics. And I think that's really the key in any challenging situation, is get low. How low can you get? I mean, and if it's just being in the moment, reading some literature, giving yourself a day off, maybe it's too much. Maybe it's time to take a break. So Jason, what are usually the tools you use when you feel yourself moving into maybe a down period?
It's really, so I love that you said gratitude, because I wrote down, to talk about gratitude equals success. It's just, that's the reality. If you're grateful for what you have, you're successful. It's already there, and that's the mindset. That's something else. But the tools that I use is just that, is that grounding. And, there's times when you get the forest for the trees. You get so caught up on, you have this definition of success, and you're like, well, I have to do this or I'm not successful. I get there. We're all human. I have goals. I just was talking to some friends last night. We have a weekly call every Wednesday night, and we kind of get together and talk. And about 2 weeks ago, I was struggling. I was just letting the world get to me, so to speak. It wasn't overwhelmed, but that's the easiest way to explain it. I was like, I had so much going on, so much I wanted to accomplish, and then I stepped back and I was like, wait a minute. All those seeds you've been planting are now growing. Take a step back, settle in, acknowledge the work you've done, respect the results as you've gotten so far, and know that you're going to get greater results, And so it's really a mindset thing for me, where I stop and I just kind of catch myself. I always say that if there's a cart with wheels on it and it's going down a path and it's going fast and the wheels are wobbly because they're loose, what do you got to do? You got to stop the cart, tighten the wheels, and then go on. Because if you keep going, those wheels are going to wobble off. If you know anything about mechanics, that's what's going to happen. So it's about, and I use an example because it's about taking that step back, stopping. Where am I at? Okay. And that's what I do. That's what I really do. I get caught up in sometimes about having this maybe not big enough picture or too big of a picture. It comes and goes. That's the thing about life, is that it has different degrees to it. And in some areas, I'm like, well, I'm going to rule the world. And in some areas, I'm like, oh, hopefully I get another client today. It just depends on what it is. It's finding that balance of what works. And so really just taking a step inside and taking stock of where I'm at, and being honest with myself and saying, okay, you have done well. These is going good. Where can you improve? What can we do about that? What do I control? What do I not control? And then just be very kind of systematic about it, and then say, okay, catch my breath and move forward.
Yeah, I mean, and it reminds me of what I heard, which is the most successful and most positive people are the people who are looking forward, not back, who are focused on what they can control, not what they can't. Because you can look around the world and it won't take you long to find something that will make you a little more depressed, a little bit more challenged. I mean, people start talking about World War III all the time. And, just to talk about it creates a lot of challenge to a lot of people, and a lot of people who aren't that strong. The other thing is, know where you are and know when it's time to pivot. Too many people, to your example, wait until the wheels have already fallen off, and maybe they're still driving the car on 3 wheels or 2 wheels, until their rims are no good. And other people just say, okay, well, it was good. To make it better needs to shift, needs to change. And there's a point where you would never want to stay in the first grade your whole life, even though it's where you are at a certain point. and it's easy to stay there because you're accustomed to it. But it's taking that next step forward that creates some challenge. The other thing is understanding time. I realize every time some surprise, especially a negative one, comes, that's when you're the most confused, the most disappointed, the most frustrated. And you know, tomorrow it'll get easier because you're just digesting it. And a lot of times it's easier to say, well, let it play out. Let's not, even something with your health, something changes. And it's easy to start focusing on, oh man, maybe I've got this, or maybe this is going to happen, and at a certain point, you really just got to let it play out. And, most of even health is about attitude, that whole element of the placebo effect. And it keeps growing, and there's no way to define or understand it. I think it's up to like 40%.
Right.
And that's huge, right? Someone gives you a sugar pill and says it's going to do this, you believe it, and all of a sudden it starts manifesting that change you want. Right. Or somebody tells you something that puts you off, and all of a sudden you start accepting and adopting it. And pretty soon, that's where a lot of people are always sick their whole life. Why? Because they don't have any confidence in their ability to heal or do anything else. And that could apply beyond just the physical side to the emotional side, the spiritual side. There's so many sides of everyone that not every channel shuts down or turns bad at the same time, right? Your income can change, but it doesn't mean anything else has to change. And I think also having a good supportive, fortifying environment makes a difference. I know with Ann, we've been together 53 years now and married 47. I know where she is all the time as far as supporting me, no matter how bad things get or have been. She's always the first cheerleader. Well, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. We'll be fine. Everything's okay. And, you have to recount, we got our health. We've got a place to live. We've got food in the refrigerator. We'll be okay for the day at least, right? And if you can say, okay, well, there's nothing I got to worry about. And during my worst times, I would always say, well, I know I'm going to have a hot meal tonight. I know I'm going to have a bed to sleep in. And tomorrow will come soon enough. And let's just let it slide for now, because you can only pound a nail so hard and pretty soon you start hurting the hammer. Yeah. Right. So I think those are just, and it's easy to tell someone until you've been in that situation. But if you've been in that situation enough and you've been around other people who've been in that situation enough, you kind of know the lay of the land. It's the unknown that's the most scary. Right. If you've been driving on ice all your life and you have an ice storm, it's like, well, got to slow down, got to give myself some more distance, maybe even pull off the road if necessary. But we'll be okay. It's the ones who freak, I remember being on my first ski lift, and I'm not a big guy for heights. And actually, I was with my son, who was about 7 at the time, and he was freaking. And I said, hey, Jonathan, I can't even look at you. I can't even help you on our own here. We were safe. It was actually summertime, so it wasn't bad weather. But your mind can get ahead of yourself, and pretty soon you start getting into a panic attack or having some anxiety. And that's a learning experience. And what was so weird about that is when we got off the ski lift, we decided to do it again. And I'm thinking, boy, I was so happy to get off of this thing, but why would I go back again? And the second time naturally is easier than the first time. And I think that's also a clue that when something is putting you off, challenging you to the point where you're changing your life around it, that's not a good place to be. The best way to deal with a challenge like that is to confront it. They have that whole thing about training. If someone's afraid of flying, well, can you go to the airport? Okay, once you get to the airport, go home. Once you get to the airport the next time, maybe go to the gate. Once you get to the gate, maybe try out the plane. So at a certain point, it's sensitivity and conditioning and you find out that the fear was greater than the reality. How many times did you walk in somebody's office thinking, oh, I'm done for it? And sometimes people do themselves in because they say, oh, I know I'm in trouble. I know you're here to talk to me about this. And it was never the case, but now it is. Policeman stops you for speeding and you confess to a first-degree murder yesterday. I mean, that's a little extreme.
Right.
Check yourself at the door. Don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, it is a matter of modulating, moderating, taking your time, piecing it out, putting it back together. So, Jason, I know you're out there trying to help a lot of people. How do you approach people who are, down on themselves, feeling like their best is not yet to come?
The one thing that I want to, and I'm answering that question, go back to what you're talking about, the placebo effect, and the guiding principle of what I do, helping people with their mental health and their life's journey, is they have to have more faith in me and the cure, so to speak, than they do in the problem. That's the first step. So if people come to me and they can't see that they can change, or they can't see that they can, do it, because I'm a tour guide. I don't do anything to anybody. I help them on their path. So if they can't even envision that, if they know that there is a better day ahead, then I could definitely help them and get there. But if they can't see that there's a better day ahead, that might not be the best person to work with. They might not be at the place yet where they're ready to make that change. A saying that I wrote down from Rabbi Jonathan Zakor is, we must change like a snake sheds its skin, because a snake that doesn't shed its skin will die. And it goes on to say that a mind that doesn't think is no longer mind. But it speaks to the fact that we have to be able to let the past go and move forward. So when someone comes to me, that's the thing. I have to qualify if they are ready to change now, and make that difference, because I could support them on that journey for sure. I do it all the time. I help people all the time, and it's pretty amazing to see people transform, but they have to be ready for it. It's like the placebo, like the sugar pill. If you don't think the sugar pill is going to help you, it's not. That's just plain and simple. Like I to go on a little bit of a tangent, hypnosis. I'm a master practitioner of hypnotherapy, and I tell people, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So if I try to help you go into trance, and you say I can't go into trance, well, guess what? You can't go into trance. So if someone comes to me and says I will never be successful, looking at other things in the picture, I could help them, because that's a limiting decision. I could help them get rid of that limiting decision if they're ready and open to it. So that's the key to success, is that you have to be open to success. But if you keep telling yourself, it's not for me, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, well, guess what? The universe only has one word, and that's yes. And so whatever you put out there, it says yes. I'm going to be successful. Yes, you are. I'm going to fail. Yes, you are. That's a hard lesson to learn. That might be a hard pill to swallow for some, but that's the reality, and that's the world that I live in, is like, focus on what you do want. And that's the key to success, is focusing. You mentioned it earlier a couple times. We both mentioned it. Focusing on what you want is going to get you that success and get you to where you want to be. And so that's what's most important. I have to work with them to make sure they can see that and live that.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important and valid what you just mentioned, because especially in today's world of social media, there's so much criticism, there's so much shaming, there's so much tribalism. You're either here or there, right? We're losing that united approach to, who's going to win, when sometimes games aren't meant to be competitive. If you look at, when you drive through the country and you see a barn raising, right? Or you see a bunch of people getting together to make a quilt, right? They're a small part of a bigger thing. And no one has a personality or identity beyond participating in the effort. People can forget where you came from, who you are, what you do. And I think if people give everybody else the common decency and let's say politeness of just being fellow human beings, just knowing everybody has feelings, everybody has ambitions, everybody has fears. How do we use all this technology, all the value and strength to support each other? And, when you have people worth $400 billion, you know, and you have somebody who can hardly scrape a meal together,
Yeah.
where is the humanity? Where is the sharing? Where is the something got me here, right? There's a saying, everybody's comes into this world with nothing. The worst you can do is break even, right? So, everybody started at zero, maybe for a very short time based on family or based on situation. But again, that's also putting a value judgment on money and that type of success and not in satisfaction. How many people live an awful life with everything that they could ever wish for? And it looks like they wish for the wrong things. They might have achieved them, but I think, there's a saying, I'd rather be with the one I love on a hut in a beach than somebody or nobody in a big mansion that there is no love or kindness or thoughtfulness, because, you can't lose certain things unless you give them up. Other things can be taken, which are usually possessions or materialism. But I found that, it's actually a harsh lesson when someone reached success early with a straight line. When they didn't have to struggle, when they didn't have to challenge themselves. How many sports people at 27 are making 30, 40 million a year, and the next year something happened, they can't play. Well, they'll never be what they were in another situation the same way. They might be better if they pivoted, if they were humble, like you mentioned, Jason, when they understood that, you can't get caught up in the noise around you.
Yeah.
I found your best friends are the ones you never think of when things go wrong. And your worst friends are the ones you thought were your best friends. And you found out it was because of what you had or what you could do for them versus who you were. I love reading audibles, especially, or listening to audibles, especially during my morning walks.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in different directions. So I was heavy into autobiographies. I just finished Henry Winkler, the Fonz, and before that was Sally Field and Al Pacino. And what you realize is they were exactly who you were when you were 5 years old or 7 years old or 10 years old. And they had family issues and situations, and they had health issues and situations. And they did achieve a lot of success, but in most cases, they never really changed as to who they were.
Right.
They never let it get to their head. They just accepted it, and it wasn't easy. People always see the prize. They don't see what went into getting that prize and how many people had to do shameful things,
Right.
challenging things to get there, cheating somebody, stealing from something, taking credit for something that wasn't theirs. And those are hard to reverse. So I know it's hard when, it's easier when you're older naturally to look back, and it's harder when you're younger to look forward, especially without a lot of context or without a lot of relativity. But, and some people have never given up their friends from high school. And other people couldn't wait to get rid of their friends from high school, depending on who they were. But a lot of it has to do with growth. How do you grow? And in most cases, and I've had partners for 25 years, 40 years even, but there's a point where you don't grow at the same level. You don't have the same ambition. Some people are happy where they're at, and other people can't wait to move on.
Right.
And you accept that. And what I realized, usually the ending to relationships are what the relationship seemed to appear to be afterwards. And I think that's kind of faulty, because let's say you had 25 great years with someone and the last year was awful. Well, it was 4% of the time you spent with them. And everything you did for those 25 years was valid, was real, was genuine. Why, used the last episode as the full determination. And that takes a lot of strength to shake hands with somebody that wasn't the best person to you, wish them the best, just for trying to be the better person. I remember my son was into football betting, and he got into it pretty good. He went to University of Nevada, Las Vegas for 5 years. So he was around that element, and he seemed to be pretty responsible. One thing I told him, I'm not going to tell you not to do something, but I'm not going to support it either. So if you can figure a way to keep it going. And what happened is he said, well, that's when online betting came on. And he said, well, I think I'm going to start making some bets. And I said, well, don't make any bets with them. Just make them with me. At least we'll keep it in the family. So tell me anything you want to bet, and I'll take the other side. And what was interesting about it, he did pretty good. And I said to him before the games would start, I said, listen, John, I hope you win every game. And he said, you're just saying that. You don't mean it. I said, no, I mean it, because it doesn't matter in the score, right? I can tell you I loved you to win, but it's not going to change the score. And I'd rather be out front saying I'm rooting for you as opposed to I hope you lose, because, again, it doesn't factor into it. So it's really, how do you project?
Right.
People are here for just a blink of the eye, but what stays is your legacy, is what you left everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not the financial side. It's the encouragement. It's when things were tough, this person didn't get bad. It didn't go wild around the house, and I think that also lives on through people. So if you're looking for longevity and legacy, make sure every word you say has some value. Every action you take is geared towards something positive. And it could be just a friendly salutation or greeting at the checkout counter. I worked in retail and I worked for tips. And, I remember those people who would go out of their way to be a little kinder to me, to take a moment and say, I just want you to know you're doing a wonderful job here. And I always look forward to coming in and seeing you. Just something as simple as that. That's so easy to do. And I went to another lecture, and I think I mentioned this in the past. The person says, it's great when you thank people for what they did for you, but thanking them isn't enough without giving them the reason. And the example was, you had a really good, safe airplane flight, and on the way out, you see the pilot or the support people on the plane, and you say, thank you for such a safe flight. I really appreciate what you do. Now, that whole thing took about 20 seconds. And most people will give somebody a nod, somebody a thumbs up, maybe a meek thank you. But why not take that extra 20 or 30 seconds? Or if something really, really gets your attention, if you have a great service person at your dinner, and you take the time to say, I just want you to understand how much I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the concern you gave our table today. Or this was a special event and you made it even better. Well, the person hearing that's as good or better than a tip. The second thing is, giving it makes you feel better.
Right.
How many times did you ever say, I should have said something, either whatever it was you should have said, but for some reason I held back and now I feel bad. Just like Jim Rohn, when I had a couple conversations with him, and he would say, what I learned about tipping was tip in advance, because then you're guaranteed to get the service you want. You say, hey, a special business occasion, here's $50 or whatever the amount is. I just want you to understand, when we're talking, we don't need anybody asking us anything, or make sure the water glasses are always full, or make sure someone's paying attention to this.
Right.
And the second thing he said about tipping is, if you're ever between one amount and another, always give the bigger amount. Yeah. Because he said, one time I had a shoe shine, and back then, did I give $1 or $2? And I gave $1. The whole day it bugged me. Why didn't you give that guy that extra dollar? And that
Right.
whole dollar wasn't worth the frustration, but it taught me from now on, if my mind says go bigger, do it. Don't go get by with just what you can get by with. And so there is a science or a method to understanding the inner relationship you have, especially with language. Is words matter, and adding a little bit extra can make a big difference. And also asking people their opinion. Why go first? Why not do a little qualifying? Why not ask, how did you feel about this? And then you'll know what you're walking into versus assuming something. And you may never have talked about the subject that was most important at the time. You just talked about what you thought was important at the time. And all of a sudden, everything starts centering around you and more you instead of them. And really, I found in business is if you take care of people, they will take care of you in time.
Yeah.
I always said everybody, the customer pays all our bills. And then the employees make sure we get to do what we do. So it was always bottom up attention versus top down attention. And that made a difference because people want to feel included. If you say, hey, this is a team and we're going to win. Well, if you don't treat everybody like a team member during the game, no one really cares about the reward or the congratulations after the game. So I know I went a little bit deeper or further. What's your thoughts, Jason?
Yeah, I think that to kind of sum up where we've been talking about and what you just were saying is so true. It's like how you define success, and success is relationships, success is people. And, if you're just looking at the scoreboard and stacking those dollars up, something's going on, because if you're just stacking dollars, there's never enough. And you're just trying to fill a void and you don't realize it, but you're just filling a void of that disconnection from people and relationships. And that's, there's going to be people out there that are a certain values type that are going to say it's all about money and that's how success is. And you have to have $1 trillion. And what do you do with that? As an example from myself, I had a career for 26 years before I finally stepped into my purpose and my passion doing what I do now. And I made good money, and I was a trainer and I worked in HR and I had all kinds of stuff and I made really good money. But it's funny, my wife and I talked about this weekly call we have with our friends. We were just talking about this last night. Because of that, we had a dual income and I was making a lot of good money. She makes good money, but we were just spending it. We were just spending the money because we weren't happy to an extent. That wasn't success. So that number on the scoreboard really wasn't our success. We are so much happier now that we're in a slower pace and we have friends and we have community and we have that stuff. So that's how I define success. We all have bills to pay. Don't get me wrong. That's we both run businesses. Don't get me wrong. That has to show up. You have to make that. But at what point? What's the reality of that? I get to see people change their lives and transition and make things happen. And that's amazing. That's successful. But to go back in when we were both making good money living in the San Francisco Bay Area, we were just spending money to kind of process how hard we were working. We were working really hard and it was a grind, and something that I'm working on with my business, talking about the people living their purpose and passion, which I think does pertain to this, is, are you going towards your passion or are you just collecting distractions? And it's really easy to do that. And, as you're looking for success, are you truly working towards what success is to you at your core? Or the idea of success that you've been told and someone made up for you that you don't really even buy into? And you're just trying to do things to get to someone else's definition. But even if you get there, you're not going to be happy. And that's obviously the ultimate goal, right? Is to be happy, to have people around you that love you and to love people. So it's a long journey. And that's what we talked about from the very beginning. Success looks different for everyone. But I think ultimately it comes down to that. Are you happy? Are you enjoying this life that we have?
Yeah, that's so true. And I've lived that life many times. And initially, I just thought that's the American way.
Yeah.
Right? You just do better and you get bigger. and you have more and you spend more. And pretty soon shopping is more of a reflex onto your ability to justify the money you're making, because other people though started out humble and stayed that way. Warren Buffett is still living in the same house he bought in 1965 in Omaha. You could drive by it. I'm sure he's got some security and everything else. But you know what? It was good then. It's still good now. The house hasn't changed, and he hasn't changed in relationship to it. Now, he could buy a city if he wanted to, or a small city at least. But what would it do for him? I had a partner for 12 years who was a billionaire, and I saw how he lived. And a lot of it was very virtuous, but a lot of it came with a lot of cost. I mean, his kids didn't turn out too well. He had challenges in a lot of places because he overstepped himself at times, or he just could do it. And, you know, I found if you need less, you have less desire to do things that are out of character with yourself. Right? If you have to get that $1 million by next year, well, you're going to probably step on a lot of things and move people aside, and maybe you'll just muscle your way through. But don't needing it now allows you to do things that really won't make you the top performer, but it'll make you a happy performer. You know, there's a point where you say, after 3 cheeseburgers, even though I could buy 3 more, I've had enough.
Yeah.
Or there's so much at the table, I don't need to take so much away. You know, I've been at dinners where it was almost a contest. As soon as the gun went off, everybody started going in with big forks and knives and spoons and digging everything up.
Yeah.
You know, and what I really enjoy about Ann the most is she will never eat the last bite of anything. No matter what it is, if it's leftovers, she'll always leave something, or she'll always share something. Would you like some of mine? Can I, you know, do this or that? And it comes natural. And other people, like as soon as you turn your head, they're grabbing that last shrimp or something else. And I actually have been at dinners where the people weighed out your portion, you know, or allocated. Everybody gets 3 shrimp, you know. And I'm like, I don't like shrimp enough to have to compete for it, you know. And if there's somebody who really covets it that much, have mine and have it with good thoughts and grace. But again, it's self-examination, and it's understanding. I think to your primary point was, are you happy? Is it something that lasts beyond the meal?
Right.
You know, is it? And another thing, scarcity has value. If you really like something, don't overdo it, because pretty soon you'll get tired of it. I don't care what the food is or the drink. If you constantly do it, eventually it's like, hey, I'm tired of it, or I can't even eat one more of those. And being modest, being humble, having humility, knowing that it doesn't take a lot to make you happy, then you can start putting your attention and time and resources towards things that can make other people happy, or you start living vicariously. You know, if someone had a 5-year-old who never had an ice cream cone, I must have had thousands of them. I would definitely give up my next one for someone who wanted their first one.
Yeah.
And, you know, make room for the people coming up. You know, it wasn't, you know, they say nothing on earth is owned. It's always on lease. Right. So you might have a house, but it was someone's house before you, and it'll be someone's house after you. So you're really just someone to take care of it, be responsible, you know, and be somebody that everybody can relate to. How many people say, you know, the person, no matter how successful they became, never changed as a person.
Right.
They're still the nice person I remember back then. Or taking time for the unfortunate, you know, and it could be a smile. It could just be a good gesture that might get somebody on the right track again. So there's so many possibilities that one door closes, another door definitely opens up. Can you move from the closed door to the open door is really the key exercise. And can you be better in that new door than you were from the last door?
Right.
And it's a graduation process that people really need to pay attention to. And also, just being aware, just finding out that, hey, I got there's a point where you find out I got more than I'll ever spend if I spend it this way.
Right.
You
Exactly.
go to Vegas tomorrow, and for how much you got, they'll figure a way of taking it from you if you give them that chance.
Yeah.
If you say, hey, they say in order to fully retire, if your passive income is greater than your present expenses, you can retire, right? Because if everything coming in is either leverage from before or residual, write enough quality books and keep getting commissions or royalties from it, then you can say, I don't need to work anymore. It doesn't mean you shouldn't, but it now means you can work at things that you thoroughly enjoy
Passion project.
and are meaningful to you. I know there's a lot of talented, creative artists who were great singers, and now they took up painting, right? It still is another direction for their creativity, but they're not having to get back on the stage if they don't want to. And so many people always question, why did they leave so early when they had so much in them? Well, they were the ones who thought, I'm tired of this, or this is old, or it's just not me. And I got to respect people, who left on top, didn't wait until someone yanked them off the stage, didn't wait until they were too old to go on. And it also has a lot to do with vanity. Aging gracefully is a good thing to do. How many men out there have one string of hair and they find a way to twirl it to cover their whole thing, or they do all this weird stuff and it is weird, and they're the ones who don't know it. The joke is kind of on them. So I also believe, along with gratitude, having a sense of humor goes a long way. Yeah. Sitting back and saying, you start laughing, how could this have happened to me? How did I get the last something? Or why am I here? And if you laugh at it, the sting goes away, and sometimes, I remember, I don't know if everybody ever read the book, Yertle the Turtle, and I used to read my kids that story from Dr. Seuss. And it was all about this one turtle that built himself up on all the other little turtles' backs. And his whole slogan was, everything I see is mine, because he was so elevated until the turtle on the bottom decided to pull out, and then he ended up in the mud. Don't be Yertle the Turtle, be who you are. And it's hard because most people, once they get an opportunity, they may think it'll never come again. They got to juice it for all they can get. It's not true. If it's good, it'll be around tomorrow. And if it's not around tomorrow, it wasn't that good. Like you've got 30 seconds to make a decision. Well, I can't make a decision in 30 seconds. And that was unfair for someone to put people into that situation. So Jason, coming up on top of the hour, got a few more minutes. How would you like to put this all together and frame it?
So, yeah, the one thing, just to go back to what you just said, I always tell, you can't sell to me. You just can't. I taught sales. I was in sales for a lot of years. I teach sales. So when someone tries to, force that decision, I'm like, if you're going to force the decision, then no. My answer is always going to be no. If you allow me some time to think about it and look at the options, I'd love to. But if you need an answer now, no. That way, nothing changes. I'm never going to change something in my life based on that flash decision. You can end up you might end up some amazing places, but then you could end up in some very not so great places. This has been a great conversation. I love it. We're talking about mindset and about how we look at and measure success, and that's great. And something I want to wrap up and end with what you had mentioned earlier, because it's my world. You talked about modeling. And modeling is basically looking at someone that's achieved successfully what you want to achieve, and then looking at how they accomplished it and then following those steps. Now, NLP, which is my main training, there's a whole process. And NLP is actually based on modeling. They took a bunch of modalities that they found out. They looked at, why do these modalities work? Why do these things help people make change in their lives? deconstructed them, put them together as a new model. Basically, it's a mindset. But we can do that in our lives too. We can find mentors, find that LinkedIn Live programs, these conversations, hopefully something we said today will spark something. I see Carrie had made a comment, spark something in somebody's mind today that'll help them move forward, getting closer to their success. Now, the key to modeling is this: you tear apart how they do something, but you also look for what's idiosyncratic. So what is something they do that's only specific to them? We use a golf swing as an example. If there's a golf pro that has an amazing golf swing and you want to model how they make that golf swing, well, you watch them and you go, what's the first thing they do? What's the next thing they do? What's so on and so forth. Well, if this golfer has this amazing swing, happens to tug on his baseball cap every time before he hits a 300-yard drive, you might not need to do that. That might be just something that they happen to do in their process. So you might try it with it and try it without it. So there's a technical side to this too, is modeling. And you look at people that have achieved success in the field that you want to achieve success in, and then model them. You're talking about reading autobiographies. I'm doing that as well. I'm just reading Alan Watts's autobiography right now, and learning, kind of seeing how he came up and what challenges he went through and how he affected them, and and how his life showed up in his work. And then, you look at that because he had some problems, like a lot of the great ones. He had some issues that weren't cleared up, and he went down the path of alcohol and drugs, and, it passed away a pretty young man. But not negativity aside, there's lessons there to be had. So look at somebody, either it's a mentor, it's a partner, it's watching these things, and take advantage of their wisdom. And I don't know if I'm frozen or because I've been having issues with mine, or if Don's frozen. There he is.
Yeah.
All right.
In there. Sorry, I missed the last 30 seconds or so.
So yeah, it's just, the thing about modeling is get a mentor, find somebody or find resources. There's no excuse, and guess what? Kind of to throw this in real quick, AI. We call, I jokingly said my group calls it the integrated assistant, or, that's there for you. You can use ChatGPT as the example, the one that I think both you and I use, but there's a lot of them out there. But you can use that as a mentor as well, because it has access to all the resources basically. So you can use it, find those prompts, find what works for you, and have it help you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just so intrigued by it. And the results are astounding that it's not ChatGPT, it's how it's been integrated in what I do in ways that it can benefit it. Right. So too many people adopt technology without an application. Knowledge without application is just a lot of crowded information in your brain. When you can say, hey, I can use this, now you're leveraging and taking advantage of it. When you say, I have to learn it because I have to keep up, or because that's what everybody's doing, you're losing the point.
Right.
Just like Google, it's just a tool. But what I find, I hardly use Google anymore. I just go to chat. Why? Because there's more definition, there's more foundation. And now I'm learning how, you can put a picture or provide a picture to chat. It'll tell you the story behind it.
Wow.
It'll and how you prompt and how you start. And there's iterative types of ways of doing it. There's chunking. It provided like 6 different ways of leveraging it that I would have never known. I mean, it cost me, I think, $13 for the Audible. But what's $13 relative to 8 hours a day of now going to 2 hours a day? And I would have never, I did, I think, 8 or 10 posts yesterday, only because I'm able to do it in the same time it used to take me 2. So why not, so in other words, something opens up because of something that wasn't available before. But, there's that one story, and I'll share real quick, and whether it's true or not, it makes sense, is when an elephant was born, they would put a steel peg in the ground
Right.
and an iron, let's say, attached to its leg.
Right.
And after a couple of years, they'd replace it with a rope and a wooden peg. Why? Because it was programmed to understand you pull on it, nothing's going to change. You're where you are. Well, understanding that a lot of times you're the one who keeps yourself in jail. When the key is in your hands and the lock's available, but I think the last thing I'll say is, by working with Jason, having these shows, you find alignment, you find similarities, and it's much easier to interact and converse and learn from each other. And that's the main thing, is having primary benefit and then secondary benefits. A lot of people have no primary benefit, all secondary benefits. Makes them less creative, makes them less of a listener. And, oh, yeah, I see that, or I identify with that, or that's something new I can put in my puzzle. And here's maybe a piece to your puzzle, and collectively you ramp up together. So final thoughts, Jason, and we'll say goodbye. And actually, we had a pretty good audience. I see we had 15 unique people watching it. Not everybody standing up and giving comments, but we appreciate them. And I'm seeing these are getting 40, 50 different views afterwards from different people. So we're building a lot of knowledge for a lot of people, and happy to do that. Jason.
That's wonderful, and thank you so much. I was trying to think how long I've been with you now. It's over a year, but I'm not sure how long I've been joining you on these shows. And I appreciate the community and all the support. And I look for you for that mentorship too. I listen to everything you say. I'm just a sponge listening to all that advice you have, because you've got so much. So it's great. Be grateful. Gratitude about. Of course.
No, you're still here.